Hi guys, hi everyone. It's super excited to be here. Thank you so much for joining me and actually taking the time to come and see my demo. I hope you had amazing time watching the demo of the main event. And this is now us going and diving into Editor X and actually trying to build stuff and see how it works. And I hope through me you could feel kind of the environment and how it is to play around with it. So I'm going to start sharing my screen. But before I do so, I just want to shout out to Nadina, who's here in the room with me. She's on the chat. So guys, whatever questions you have, write it down in the chat. We'll try to address them throughout this tutorial, but maybe we'll postpone some of them to the end of the session. So if you have questions that are not answered, stay tuned because we will answer everything at the end or as much as we can. So I'm Guy. I'm part of the user experience team on Editor X. I'm a UX prototyper and a designer, and I'm going to take you through a special template and a specific page that I've designed, and we're going to build it together from scratch again. So let's start, and I'm going to share my screen. And here we go. So I'm just going to clear everything for me. And this is it, guys. So this is the template we're going to see how we're building today. So it's an about page in a jewelry shop kind of template. And you can see it has this cool effects of parallax scrolling, which gives this kind of cool 3D effect. And another cool thing that it has here is this sticky or split effect. You'll see that when I'm scrolling down, this image suddenly freezes and it looks like I'm only scrolling half of my page. And at the end, it stops and I can scroll all the way down to my footer. Okay, so let's also resize this bad boy and see how it looks like on other breakpoints. You can see everything is fully responsive. So even on mobile, it looks really, really good. And we're gonna learn actually how to do everything, including all breakpoints. So make yourself comfortable, sit tight, and we're gonna start. This is Editor X, so welcome. This is the environment. This is how it looks like. Maybe some of you have seen it before, maybe this is your new time here. Let's start and dive in all the way through. I'm just gonna say that I have these two parts already here, which is the header and the footer. You can see they are colored in green because they are master's part. That means that throughout my website, I can reuse them. And whenever I create a new page, they come automatically. That's why I already have them. I haven't edited them myself. They just came with this new page. So I'm going to make all this stuff here in this big main section. Now I want to show you. So basically here we have this about, then we have this image here. And then we have, so 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 kind of parts to the page. So I'm going to go here to my section and I'm going to add a grid. And the grid will help everything to be very responsive and also will help me to create this kind of split design. I'm going to apply grid. And we said we have 7 parts. So I'm going to make 2 columns for 2 sides, and I'm going to make 8 rows. So why the extra row? We'll hang on for a second. And when we'll get there, I promise you'll understand why. So I'm going to add the grid, and suddenly I have a grid on, and I can actually edit it. I'm also going to open my inspector, and I can remove a minimum height for the section. I don't need it anymore, since the grid is going to hold the size of my content. Cool. So I'm going to do adjust grid. And this time I'm going to choose edit grid. And this is the behind, kind of under the hood of the grid system. And we can actually take everything and kind of move it around, resize our grid or change it. And we can also do a lot of, custom changes. So I can change the units myself through the inputs. And you'll see here that the grid uses something called FR units, which stands for fractions. So what's cool about fractions is that it divides the space automatically depending on how many fractions are used. So you don't have to calculate in percentage how many you need. So for example, if this is 1 FR, I'm going to change this one to 2 FRs. It automatically becomes 2 times bigger than this, no matter what is my breakpoint size. So that's fraction to you. But we're not going to really change it because for the 2 columns, I just want to keep it as is. But we are going to change all the rows. So here we have something different going on. We have something called min max. And this is very cool. I'm going to give it a minimum height, which will never be smaller than, and I can also give it a maximum height. Now you can see here that we have like tons of different units to use from. Some are absolute, some are relative. So I'm not going to go over and explain all on them because you can go really deep into it and do a lot of very custom and crazy sizing in the grid. But I do applaud you to go into our Academy X. It has lessons that actually explains explicitly about the grid. Nadina will also post later on at the end some link to the Academy X, so you can go and check it out. We're going to use something called viewport sizes. So viewport sizes actually are derived from the size of the screen. So we have viewport width and height. So let's take, for example, VW, which is the width. Imagine we're going to split the screen size into 100 pieces. So one VW is 1% of the screen size. That means that I can give it a relative sizing, but to the viewport. So if I'm looking in a mobile or on tablet, on no matter what device I'm looking at from, it's gonna react relative to the size of my device. So I'm gonna use VH, which is view height, and I'm gonna make 20 for the first one. So we have this kind of small section here with the title. And then I'm gonna do some cool patterns. So I'm gonna make 20 VH again. And then this row is gonna be 70 VH. Why am I using 20 and 70? Well, 100 VH is exactly 100% of the entire height of the screen I'm watching it from. So I want it to be just a little bit smaller because you see, if I'm going to look at my design, you can see that all the parts are not 100% the entire height of the screen. So this one is 20, this one is 70. And again, I'm going to alternate and do 20 VH and then go and I'm going to make 70. And we're going to keep kind of alternating with this kind of small size, big size. So again, 20 VH. And the last two are going to be a bit different. I want this one to be 80 VH. So I want this small one and this big one to be together. I want them to be 100 VH. And the last one is going to be 100 VH in total. So you'll see why, but this will be used for the sticky. So hang on a bit and you'll get there. We'll get there. Cool. So I'm going to click done and I already have this cool grid and we're going to use it to place all the content inside and actually create our own design. So I'm going to start with the title and go part by part. I'm going to click on the add panel and I'm just going to drag a title here. Just going to throw it on my grid. And I'm going to use the inspector. This is like the heart of Editor X. Whenever you choose something, you see all the parameters and properties of the same element you're selecting. So I'm going to choose, I'm just going to align it to the center, and I'm going to make sure it's 40 pixels from the top. That seems pretty right. And I'm going to make some changes to the text itself. So I'm going to make it centered. And I'm going to also change the kind of letter spacing. So I'm going to do 0.25. Now I want to change the font of this specific text, but I want to show you something cool. So I've done some pre-work for this tutorial. So because this is part of a template, it already comes with a design system behind the scene. So if I'll open my theme manager, you can see I have some colors from the template, and I also have typography already ready. So I have all these different kind of headers and headings and texts, and it's already set up for the color and the right kind of font. So I don't need to find the font. I can actually use it here from the head. This is like the theme kind of styling. And I know it's going to be a heading 4. This is the type of text I want. Let's just change the content. So it's supposed to say about. And I want to make sure, let's do the sizing again because the theming changed it. I want to make sure that the sizing of my text is a little smaller. So what I'm going to do, I don't want to choose a specific font size. I want my text to be a little more responsive. So I'm actually going to choose scale text. And now the cool thing about it is that I can give it a range. So let's say 18 pixels till 22. And the text, yeah, I hope you can see it, but when I'll resize the canvas, it actually shrinks a bit with the sizing of the screen. And that causes the text to shrink proportionally, so it doesn't have to wrap around, and there's always room, and it's kind of fitting to the screen size you're viewing, okay? So it kind of helps a lot with responsiveness. Cool, so we have this thing going on. let's continue with the other parts of our design. So I'm gonna add some kind of image. I'm gonna go to my media. And again, I already uploaded all the images and media I'm going to use throughout the website. That's why you're going to see it already here in my panel, kind of ready for me to use. So I'm going to drag this image and I'm going to put it in a specific grid area. I want to make sure it covers 2 rows. So right now it's on this specific grid area. And the cool thing about it is that I can stretch the image and it will populate the entire space of it. You see, it populates 2 rows and half a column, like 1 column. And I'm going to do the same with container. So I'm going to use a different approach to edit. I'm just going to right click and I can choose quick add and add a container. Great. Now let me resize the canvas just a bit for us to see all the website, because I don't want to scroll around all the time. And I'm going to put the container here between the big row and the small row. And if you're observant, maybe you realized right now why I use this certain design of the grid. I'm going to actually put stuff on a small row, then on a big row, and then I'm going to put something on a big row and a small row. And this will create this kind of stepping effect that we see here in my design. So that's why we have the alternation of 20 and 70 BH. Cool. Let's change some design about this container. I'm going to go to my design tab and let's give it this kind of red color. And it also comes with an outline, which I don't need. So I'm just going to make it 0. Cool. Let's add some content. So I'm going to actually come here to this because this title looks the same way I want it to look already. And I'm using a MacBook, so I'm pressing Command D. For you PC guys, you can use Control D, and it actually duplicates the element. And I'm just going to attach it here to the container. And I'm just gonna align it to the center, and I'm gonna make sure it's 40 pixels from the top. Okay, what next? Now we need to add some paragraphs. So again, I'm gonna right click and I'm gonna go to quick add and just throw a specific paragraph here. Now here on the side, I already have the content I'm gonna use. So first of all, I'm gonna go to the title here. And I'm going to change the title to the new section. And I also have the content here from the paragraph. It's basically the same content you can see in the template that I've shown here. So let's space it out and change the design. So I want it to be centered and it needs to be white because it doesn't look very clear on top of the red. And this one could also be white, or should also be white. Awesome. I'm going to make sure this is also aligned. Now I'm going to do something which is called stacking. So basically when we throw stuff around in Editor X, they are not aware of each other. They can actually overlap each other because they are not aware of siblings elements. So to create some kind of awareness or kind of relation between them, I can multi-select elements. I'm going to just make sure they're aligned and I can stack them together. And now you can see they are actually aware of each other and they know exactly the amount of margin in between them. And this is a very cool tool for responsive things that will push each other if there's not enough room instead of going overlapping over each other. Cool. So I'm going to add another image here. I'm going to go to my media. I'm going to bring this signature here. And I'm just going to pop it into my stack. So I'm going to make sure it's at the bottom. And I'm just going to align it to the center. Now, the cool thing about this image is that it's an SVG. It's a vector art. So I can actually go to the design panel and change the colors to whatever I want. So I'm gonna choose white as well because everything here is white. And I'm gonna make it a bit smaller. So I'm gonna make it 10%. Now I wanna show you something that can happen. I gave it 10%, which means it's gonna change on the size of the parent, which changes on the size of our parents. Everything is kind of inherent from the size of the viewports. That means that on very small viewports, it can get very, very tiny. And I don't want that. It's like too small. So I'm going to do something to prevent it. I'm going to keep it at 10%, but I'm going to give it a minimum of 60 pixels. And I'm going to give it a maximum of 100 pixels. That's the way that now I can prevent it from being oversized or too small. So you can see I'm going to resize it and it's going to grow and shrink. But at a certain point, it's going to stop shrinking or stop growing. So that's a cool way to make sure things are aligned throughout your design the way you want them to. Cool. So now what I want to do, I'm going to take this stack and I just want to make sure everything is spaced the same way. So this paragraph should be, let's say 60 pixels from the title. And this one should be also 60 pixels. And I don't need the margin at the bottom. I'm going to take the entire stack and I'm going to actually dock it to the center in the middle of my section, of my container. Now, when things get smaller and there's not enough room, the text is going to wrap. And you see it's pushing around stuff because of the stack. But it can be at a certain point, like all the way up at the edge of my container. And it doesn't look very well, in my opinion. So I'm going to click on the container again. I'm going to go down here in the inspector to the padding. And I'm just going to add 60 paddings from the top and the bottom to make sure that no matter what, we have some like breathing room for our design. So you see, it always keeps it. Cool, awesome. Let's continue with the rest of our design. So we have this thing going on. Let's continue with the next section. I'm actually going to save some time. I'm going to click on my container. And again, I'm going to duplicate it with Command D. And what I'm going to do, I'm just going to use this drag handle and I'm going to move it here. And I'm going to make sure, again, it's on 2 rows, a small and a big one, so I can just stretch it. Cool. Now let's change the design and the content. So I don't need this signature anymore. And let's change the color. So it's supposed to be a different color. I'm going to choose it. Let's choose this kind of lavender muted purple. And let's change the text. So again, I have it pre-prepared here. I'm going to copy the actual content and I'm going to change it to the new one. And I have this new text here going on. So I'm copying it as well. Cool. Now, again, I want to change it to black because it's not very visible on this kind of bleak kind of background. But again, I'm going to use a different approach. I'm going to go all the way up here. I'm going to right click on this title. I'm going to choose copy element design. And now my cursor is suddenly this kind of brush. And I can actually click on the title and it will only paste the styling of this element. And so it won't change the content, it would just paste styling. So just like that, it became the right color. And in this specific text, I'm going to use the theming I have. So I'm going to choose heading 2, and that already changes the color for me and the font. Cool, let's give it a sizing. So again, I'm going to make sure it has a scale text. And let's give it something like 40 pixels till 17 pixels. Okay, cool. So we have this thing going on. Now I'm looking at this and I'm looking at the design, and I think in here I have like too much headroom. So I want to make this portion a bit smaller. I'm going to make sure I'm choosing my section, and you can see I see the grid lines on my canvas. I can actually go and drag it and just make it a bit smaller. So let's do something like this. I think that looks better, kind of more concise. Cool. Now let's add another image. So again, I'm going to go to my media panel and I'm going to take this image and I'm going to make sure it's on a big row and then a small one, and I'm going to stretch it. So that's a cool image and it looks good, but we can do better. So I want to give it this cool parallax effect. You can see it here, kind of gives it like we're peeking through the design and it's kind of 3-dimensional. So it's pretty easy. I just go to the setting of this image and I'm going to choose scroll behavior here. And I have parallax. And it's going to recalculate it to give it the space to parallax. And now you can see that the image changed a bit. Now, to view the parallax effect, we have to be on preview. So I'll just do the preview. And we should see the effect going on. So yeah, that's pretty cool. So we have this kind of 3-dimensional effect. Cool, that was pretty easy. Let's go on. We're almost at the end of the page of the design wise. I'm going to add another image. So we have this beautiful model here. I'm just going to put it here. And again, I'm going to make sure it's on 2 rows and I'm going to stretch it. Now, this image is it should be sticky in the design, but I'm going to get to it in a few moments. Okay, so just hang on. We'll get there. Trust me, I'm going to explain why. We have the final section. So again, I'm going to go to this section because it's already, most of the things are design-wise are already there. I'm going to duplicate it again. And I'm just going to use, again, the drag handle to move it around. And I'm going to scroll here just making sure that I bring it to the right place. Again, I want to make sure it's on 2 rows. This time it's going to be on 2 very big rows, but it's okay because we have a lot of content there. And that's it. Now let's, again, change the content and design. So I have the text here. I'm going to just grab it. And I'm going to change the content itself. Sustainable future, very ominous and nice, very cool and interesting. And let's change, actually this text is pretty much the same, so I'm gonna leave it, and we don't need the signature anymore. Cool. Let's go and select the container. And again, I'm gonna change the background color. So I'm gonna choose this kind of orange. And I want the colors to be black now because again, it will be more visible on this kind of color. So I just double clicked it and I'm just gonna rapidly change it to the black color. And here we go. Cool. Now I'm gonna take this paragraph and I'm gonna copy and paste it. And I've already put it inside the stack. And I'm gonna remove 1 paragraph. The reason I did this is because in the original design that I've made, you can see we have a paragraph, like 2 paragraphs, and then a third one, and in between they have images. So we're gonna insert the images now in between all the paragraphs. So I'm gonna go again to my media panel, and I'm gonna bring this image here. So I'm gonna just throw it here. Now in the design, I made it, it's a bit more squarish. So I'm gonna use the resizer here, and it's gonna resize only on 1 kind of axis. And let's make it kind of a square. So that seems about right. And again, I'm just gonna drag it on my stack. And I'm gonna make sure it's not on top of the title, but between the title and the paragraph. Awesome. So now I'm just gonna align it. And I wanna make it just a tad bit smaller. So let's do 50%. And I hope you're already inside my head. What is an image without being parallax image? We know it's cooler. We know it gives a lot of wow effect. So parallax, you know, I love it. And we're gonna actually copy and paste it again. So Command D, I'm duplicating it. And I'm inserting it in the stack above the final paragraph. We're aligning it. And the reason I duplicated it is because it's in the exact same shape that I want it to be for the image. So now I can just click change image and choose the final image in my design. And parallax, of course. So let's parallax it. Okay. Let's just preview one more time to see the parallax is working nice and to see how it looks. Very, very awesome. Cool. Great. So now we are only left with the sticky part, which is making this image stop and then scroll with us. So it's very easy. I'm going to click on the image, and in the inspector, I'm going to go to scroll, and I'm going to choose sticky. And that's it. But I want to explain first about how sticky works, and we're going to see it in a moment because you can, again, only see it on preview. So you see I have this top offset. This means that at a certain offset from the top of my page, when I scroll down, everything looks the same like any other image. But when I get to a certain offset, in this specific case, 0 from the top, it's going to stick to the viewport, and it's going to start scrolling together with me until it reaches to the end of the containing parent. In this case, it's the section. And I hope maybe now you understand why I left this kind of empty space here. I kind of visualize it like a rail for the image which is sticky to kind of slide on when it's sticky. And when it's going to reach to the end, it's going to stop and we can scroll all the way down to the footer. So let's actually see it in action. I'm going to preview. And you can see we're scrolling, everything looks pretty much normal. Then bam, it is stuck to the top. And it looks like only half of our website is scrolling until we reach the end of the parent section. So very cool. Awesome, guys. I'm hoping you're as excited as me by now. We are only left with the task of making it responsive in all breakpoints. So don't worry, it's not going to be very tedious. Let's start doing the work. And I'm first going to resize my canvas and just go into my tablet. So in the tablet, I think it looks pretty well. So I don't want to change a lot. I just think maybe the text could be a bit smaller. So I can just change the text size. And again, I'm gonna enter to the text, and let's change this from 18 to like 16 till 18. So I'm gonna make all the titles 16 till 18, and all the text of the paragraphs, I'm gonna make it smaller. So let's do it 14 to 16. Cool. So I'm gonna do the changes throughout. Again, 16 till 18. And this little guy, let's make it 30 till 40. So it won't change that much. But again, now I think there's too much space here. So I'm just gonna make sure I'm using this blue breadcrumbs to go to the section. I'm just gonna make sure I'm on the section so I can drag the row and make it a bit smaller. So maybe something like that. And we have the final text to change here. So bear with me, guys, you're the best. This one should be 14 till 16. And we are only final, we already have one final text to change. So again, 14 till 16. And that's it. Now, I'm not sure you've picked on that, but I've changed all the sizes. But if I'll go to bigger breakpoints to the desktop, it all reverts to the size we set at the beginning. So I just want to make sure that you understand that in Editor X, when we work, the breakpoints work in a cascading fashion. That means that when we make a change, it only affects the current breakpoint and the smaller ones. So you don't have to worry about changes to override the bigger breakpoints. But those changes have to be style changes. Okay, so data or structure will be across breakpoints. What do I mean by data and structure? If I'm gonna take something out of a container, or if I'm gonna change the actual text, that's actually changing the data or the structure. So it's gonna be across the breakpoints. So when we'll go to the next breakpoint, which is the mobile, and in this case, I really don't like the way that everything is so squeezed. Although we have this grid, so everything resizes pretty awesomely responsive, this is way too small and tight for mobile. I'm going to actually change the grid. And again, I have this safeness of knowing that it's going to affect only the breakpoint of the mobile, because we are using CSS grid and it's considered as styling. So I can even completely remove the grid. Let's even, I'll show you in a minute how we actually change the entire grid, and it will not destroy or ruin the grid in bigger breakpoints. So let's just do that. I'm going to click on my section and I'm going to do adjust grid. But this time, you can see we have some kind of algorithm behind the scene that kind of recognize what layout we have right now, and it suggests alternatives. So I'm just going to use one column this time. And just like that, it changed everything to one column. But I just want to show you, I'm going to go all the way back to desktop, and we still have the original grid. So nothing was destroyed in the process. No grids were being harmed in the process. So great, we have this grid, and you can see every item takes around 2 rows, but we have some like extra rows here in the middle. So I'm going to fix it. I'm going to just take everything to the right position in the new grid. I'm going to click on this new container, and I'm going to open my inspector. And down here, I have something called grid area. So basically, the grid area is the numeral representation of where things are inside our grid. So we can see in what column and what row it's on. Okay, so in this case, I can see that this one starts on grid line 11 till 13. So I want to move it 3 lines up. So let's do it 8, and let's do it until 11. So it will take 2 parts. So great. And we'll do the same with this guy. So I'm going to do 11 till 13. And this guy is a big one. So I'm just going to go down and make sure it starts at 13 and finishes all the way down till the end. And that's just like that. We have a completely different layout for our mobile than our desktop. Now, the only thing I want to do, which changes in the design, I want to take this image and I want to make it not be sticky, because I think right now it's small and it won't be, there's not even enough space here for it to actually be sticky. So there's no need for it. So you know what I like? I'm going to add some parallax. So again, I'm going to go here and I'm going to choose a scroll behavior of parallax. Cool. So let's see what's going on. And I'm going to preview the entire thing. And you can see we have our amazing kind of layout for the desktop. We have the sticky going on. We can go all the way back to the tablet, and we still have this cool kind of design going through. And I can go all the way down to mobile, and everything becomes one nice column with the parallax I like. And that's it, guys. We have the full design, and you can pat yourself on the back. You've been through a lot with me, and we finished an entire page. So this is it, guys. I hope you liked it. I hope it was awesome. And now it's your turn. So I'm here for questions, and Nadina is on the hot phone or the hot chat or whatever, giving me all the questions, and I'm here to answer whatever.
So Vicky asks, how many breakpoints do you usually set up?
Great question, Vicky. So I'm going to repeat the questions just in case you don't hear them. Vicky asks about the number of breakpoints. What is the kind of standard amount? So you can see on editor X, we gave you 3 breakpoints because this is kind of the golden standard. We see that these are the main devices that people use, but understanding exactly what is the size of the device is very hard because there's so many devices these days. That's why each breakpoint is an actual range. It's not like a static screenshot. But you can create custom breakpoints wherever or whatever size you want. So you can create a lot more than 3. And I think, Vicky, for that question, it's very dependent on your design. I kind of see it as if each breakpoint in between is kind of like a place for me as a designer to decide on a different kind of art style for people or users to consume. So I think it's very dependent on the design.
Right. Andre asks, how do you swap rows?
What do you mean by swapping? I'll try to explain what I think, and I hope Andre that will answer.
Andre, you can let me know if it does.
Yeah. So there's a few ways to handle rows on the grid. One, adjust the grid. So I can edit the grid, and I can just, again, choose my rows. I can delete them and add more. And after I rechanged or redesigned my grid, I can always go and like I did with the example, select the elements and then assign them to the new grid areas. So if I want this to start from the second line and not from the first one. If you meant how do I actually switch things around, so again, you can use the grid area here in the inspector, and you can just assign different elements to different rows, and it will, again, only affect a certain breakpoint and downwards cascading.
Awesome. And Lisa has a question about units of measure. She wants to know when it's best to use pixels versus percentages versus WH.
Okay, awesome question.
WH, excuse me.
So we, as designers, most of the time we are used to work in pixels, and we like to be pixel perfect. And pixels can still be responsive. It's okay to put absolute stuff. I think if you have things that the size of them is very crucial to the design, the actual dimensions, you can think about using pixels. If you have things that are kind of like conceptually, for example, I have this container, so I know it needs to be half of the screen and it needs to hold some text. So if it's going to be very big or very, very narrow, that's not something I'm concerned about the design. It will help me to make it relative. Now, when do we use the VH versus percentage? A lot of time when we want things to fit in regards to the view size, the viewport size, we'll use the VW units. And percentage is if I want something to change according to the parent, direct parent. Another cool thing, I'm not going to elaborate too much, but I can actually go to something very nested inside a parent and make it in VH or VW. So it will be relative to the viewport, even though the parent is not the viewport. Maybe it's a section. I hope that answered. Awesome, guys. So Nadina, if you can also put in the chat the Academy X. And guys, thank you so much for being here. Thank you for being part of the event. Thank you for coming and viewing my specific tutorial. And I wish you the best creativity and unstoppable power of creation in Editor X. Please go inside, have fun, and be in touch with us, because we really, really love to be in touch with you users and hear what you want and what you have to do and use, and see how you use the system. We're gonna have this recording also available later on if you want to see it again or share it. So stay tuned and we'll let you know how to find it. Okay, so thank you very much, guys, and hack on.